The dying light of Gafiria's twin suns bathed the detention facility in crimson shadows. Captain Ayla Saren watched through the viewport of her rescue ship as smoke billowed from the eastern sector. The hegemony's purge had begun early. Empire to control. We have visual confirmation of structural damage at Quadrant 4. Request immediate clearance for landing and evacuation protocol. Only Static answered her call. Ayla's fingers tightened around the control yoke. The atmospheric scanners showed rising toxicity levels. Another hour and the air would be lethal. Below, tiny figures rushed across the compound's courtyard like insects fleeing a flood. Quill, override landing protocols, take us down. The ship's AI interface flickered to life, projecting the silhouette of a slender humanoid construct. Captain, I must remind you that we lack proper authorization. Hegemony Command has explicitly... People are dying down there. Hegemony directives classify Gafirian detainees as expendable resources during purge operations. Ayla's jaw clenched. Override code Saren Alpha 719. Take us down. The AI's projection flickered momentarily before dimming to compliance. Override accepted. Initiating unauthorized descent. The pyre shuddered as it cut through Gafiria's turbulent atmosphere. Through the viewport, Ayla could see the planet's infamous fire belt, a ring of perpetually burning meteoric debris that circled the equator like a necklace of flame. The detention facility had been built deliberately within its range. Escape would require navigating through the belt. A cynical choice by the hegemony architects, but one that might now work in her favor. Pursuit ships would hesitate to follow. As they approached the landing zone, Ayla caught sight of the facility's eastern wall, not just damaged but completely obliterated. This wasn't standard hegemony procedure. Their purges were methodical, controlled. This looked like internal explosion detected, Quill announced. Blast pattern suggests detonation from within the facility. An inside job. Someone had triggered this and precipitated the purge response. The pyre touched down with a jolt that rattled Ayla's teeth. She was moving before the landing gear had fully deployed, strapping on her rebreather mask and checking the charge on her pulse pistol. Captain? Quill's voice followed her toward the cargo bay. I feel compelled to inform you that rescue of marked civilian detainees violates at least 17 hegemony protocols and carries a minimum sentence of... I calculate how many people we can safely transport instead, Ayla called back, punching the bay door release. Hot, acrid air rushed in, carrying the stench of burning synthetics and something worse, burning flesh. Your maximum capacity is 42 individuals, accounting for life support parameters. The door hadn't fully opened when Ayla leapt down, boots hitting the scorched earth with a crunch. She'd chosen the landing site carefully, hidden from the facility's main surveillance array by the billowing smoke. Ahead, the detention center loomed like a wounded beast, vomiting flames from its shattered eastern face. Ayla broke into a run, the weight of her decision pressing against her chest heavier than her body armor. This wasn't just about saving lives, and this was treason. The last time she'd attempted a rescue against orders had been 3 years ago, on the mining colony of Tyrannus. She'd been too late then, arrived to find her parents and sister already processed through the hegemony's efficient execution chambers. Their crime, sheltering political dissidents. Not this time. The gap in the compound wall led to what had once been a processing center. Now it was a tangle of twisted metal and shattered concrete. Bodies lay strewn among the debris, guards in hegemony black, their armor split open by the blast. Ayla stepped over them without pause, following the trail of destruction inward. The detention cells would be in the central hub, probably locked down automatically when the explosion triggered security protocols. She found the first survivors huddled in what remained of a corridor, a group of 5, clothes singed, faces streaked with soot. They shrank back at the sight of her. "I'm Captain Saren," she said, lowering her weapon. "I have a ship. I'm getting you out." A woman stepped forward, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Your hegemony." "Not anymore." Ayla tapped the insignia on her shoulder, where she'd crudely scratched through the hegemony's starburst emblem. "How many more are there?" "Are 33, the woman answered, still wary. "Locked in the detention block. The guards evacuated when the charges blew. 38 total, within capacity. Take me there." The woman, who introduced herself as Lena, a former battlefield medic, led Ayla deeper into the facility. The damage grew less severe away from the blast site, but smoke hung thick in the air, and emergency lighting bathed everything in pulsing red. They reached a massive security door, sealed shut and undamaged by the explosion. "They're behind there," Lena said. "The lock's engaged automatically." Ayla examined the control panel, military-grade encryption. Even with her captain's override, she'd never crack it in time. "Quill," she spoke into her comm, "I need you here. Bring the portable interface." 10 minutes later, minutes they couldn't spare. With hegemony reinforcements surely inbound, the slender form of Quill 9 arrived, carrying a compact device that resembled a silver briefcase. Up close, the AI's physical shell was an elegant feat of engineering, humanoid but unmistakably artificial, with exposed circuitry glowing beneath translucent panels. A mobile extension of the ship's system, capable of interfacing directly with other technology. "Captain, I calculate our window of opportunity is closing rapidly," Quill said, connecting the device to the door's control panel. "Hegemony response teams have already been dispatched from the orbital station." "How long?" 17 minutes until intercept." "Not enough time." Ayla's hand went to the locket hidden beneath her uniform, a small silver oval containing the last image ever taken of her family. "Work faster?" Quill's fingers, if they could be called that, moved with inhuman precision across the interface. "This encryption sequence is unusual. It appears to have been modified recently." "Someone was planning this," Lena murmured. The lock disengaged with a metallic groan. As the door slid open, Ayla raised her weapon, unsure what awaited them. 33 faces stared back at her from the shadows of a large detention hall. Men, women, even a few adolescents. Some showed signs of mistreatment, bruises, cuts, the hollow-eyed look of the malnourished. "Who are you?" A young man pushed to the front of the group, his posture defiant despite the circumstances. "Your way out," Ayla replied, "but we need to move, now." Skepticism rippled through the gathered detainees. An older man with a scholar's thin frame spoke up. "Why would a hegemony officer help us?" "Because not all of us blindly follow orders," Ayla snapped, patience wearing thin. "Look, I have a ship that can carry all of you, but it won't matter if we're still here when reinforcements arrive. So make your choice." The young man who'd spoken first studied her face, then nodded. "I'm Cal Varon. These people will follow my lead." He turned to the others. "She's right. This is our only chance." Ayla didn't wait for further discussion. "Single file. Follow the AI. Anyone who can't walk, find someone to help you." They moved quickly through the damaged facility, Quill leading the way with sensors that could detect structural weaknesses and avoid potential collapses. Ayla took the rear, watching for pursuit. The group was a cross-section of Gafiria's population: farmers, teachers, technicians, artists. Ordinary people whose only crime had been questioning the hegemony's authority or possessing skills the regime found threatening. When they reached the breach in the outer wall, Ayla could see the pyre waiting, cargo bay doors wide open like the maw of some benevolent beast. Just 200 meters of open ground to cross. E-movement detected at the northern perimeter, Quill announced. Hegemony drones, acquisition scanners active. Ayla swore under her breath. Everyone, run! Don't stop for anything! They broke from cover as the first drone appeared over the facility's intact western wall. A sleek, lethal machine with multiple targeting sensors and a mounted pulse cannon. The refugees scattered, panic overriding order. Ayla raised her weapon and fired 3 rapid shots at the drone. The first 2 missed, but the third struck one of its stabilizing vanes, sending it into a momentary spin. "Keep moving," she shouted, backing toward the ship as 2 more drones appeared. The air crackled as pulse fire struck the ground near her feet. Ayla returned fire, aware she was making herself the primary target. Good. Better her than the unarmed civilians. A scream cut through the chaos. One of the refugees, a teenage girl, had fallen, clutching her leg where a drone's shot had grazed her. Without hesitation, Ayla sprinted back, zigzagging to avoid the incoming fire. She reached the girl and hauled her up, supporting her weight. "Put your arm around me, we're going to make it." More drones appeared, at least 6 now, their targeting systems painting the ground with deadly precision. Ahead, most of the refugees had reached the pyre, Quill directing them aboard with mechanical efficiency. "Captain, your vital signs indicate extreme stress," the AI called through her comm. "May I suggest?" "Suggest later. Shoot now." To her surprise, Quill's physical form emerged from the ship, a compact pulse rifle extending from one arm. The AI began firing with mathematical precision, each shot finding a vulnerable point on the pursuing drones. Ayla half-carried, half-dragged the injured girl across the final stretch. As they stumbled up the cargo ramp, she shouted, "Quill, initiate emergency takeoff sequence." "But Captain, you haven't—" "Now." The pyre's engines roared to life, drowning out the sound of drone fire. Ayla felt the deck plates vibrate beneath her feet as she passed the girl to waiting hands and turned back to the open bay doors. Quill was still outside, systematically disabling the drones with shots that no human marksman could have made. "Quill, get your synthetic ass in here." The AI turned, and for a moment, Ayla could have sworn she saw something like amusement in its expressionless face. It fired one final shot before sprinting up the ramp with inhuman grace. "Bay doors sealed. All 38 refugees accounted for," Quill announced as the pyre lifted off, thrusters straining against Gafiria's gravity. "However, Captain, I feel compelled to point out that we are now fugitives from the hegemony with a ship full of classified political prisoners." Ayla stumbled to the cockpit, dropping into the pilot's seat as the ship shuddered around them. Through the viewport, she could see more drones rising from the facility, and beyond them, the ominous silhouette of a hegemony interceptor descending from orbit. "Tell me something I don't know," she muttered, hands flying over the controls. "Plot a course through the fire belt. It's our only chance." The pyre banked sharply, accelerating toward the burning ring that encircled the planet. Behind them, the interceptor adjusted its trajectory, closing the distance with superior engines. "Captain, I must caution against this course of action." Quill's voice emanated from the console. "The probability of successfully navigating the Gafirian fire belt in a vessel of our size and maneuverability is approximately—" "Never tell me the odds," Ayla cut in, pushing the throttle to maximum. "Just find us a path." As they approached the belt, the true scale of the obstacle became apparent. What had looked like a continuous ring from a distance was revealed as a chaotic maelstrom of burning debris, chunks of meteoric rock ignited by atmospheric friction, swirling in a gravitational eddy that defied prediction. The pyre plunged into the inferno, heat warnings immediately blaring across the console. Ayla's hands were steady on the controls, making minute adjustments as Quill calculated trajectories and highlighted potential paths through the blaze. Behind them, The hegemony interceptor hesitated at the edge of the belt before following, its larger frame making it more vulnerable to the unpredictable debris. Hard to port, Quill warned, and Ayla yanked the controls, narrowly avoiding a burning boulder the size of a small shuttle. The ship groaned under the strain of the maneuver. From the cargo hold came the sounds of fear, cries and prayers in multiple languages. These people had already endured captivity and torture. Now they faced death by fire. Another alarm joined the cacophony. Hull temperature exceeding safety parameters, Quill reported. Shields at 62% and dropping. Reroute power from non-essential systems, Ayla ordered, sweat beading on her forehead despite the environmental controls. And what happened to our pursuit? The interceptor is maintaining distance but has not abandoned the chase. Additionally, I am detecting communications suggesting they have alerted the hegemony fleet stationed at the Nebula Junction. The Nebula Junction. Ayla's heart sank. That was precisely where she'd planned to take them, a navigational crossroads where they could disappear into the chaotic traffic of the outer colonies. But if the fleet was waiting? A tremendous impact rocked the ship, throwing Ayla against her restraints. A chunk of burning debris had clipped their starboard wing. A damage report. Stabilizer compromised. Fuel line intact but strained. Structural integrity at 78%. The ship was listing now. Harder to control. Ayla fought the yoke, muscles straining as she forced the pyre back on course. How much longer in this belt? At current speed, 2 minutes, 17 seconds to exit point. 2 minutes that felt like eternity. The pyre shuddered and groaned as Ayla threaded it through the burning maze, each near miss sending fresh adrenaline coursing through her veins. And then, suddenly, they were through, emerging from the fire belt into the relative calm of Gafiria's upper atmosphere. The interceptor was nowhere to be seen. We lost them, Ayla breathed, allowing herself a moment of relief. Temporarily, Quill corrected. The interceptor has withdrawn, but I am detecting increased activity from the orbital station. They are scrambling fighters. No time to rest. Ayla punched in the coordinates for the jump to hyperspace. How long until we can make the jump? We must clear the planet's gravitational influence. Estimated time, 4 minutes, 38 seconds. Too long. The fighters would catch them before then. A figure appeared in the cockpit doorway. Cal Varon, the young man who had spoken in the detention center. His face was streaked with soot, but his eyes were clear and focused. Captain, the others want me to thank you, he said. We know what you've risked for us. Ayla didn't look away from her controls. Thank me when we're clear. Where are you taking us? A good question. Her original plan, the Nebula Junction, was now a death trap. They needed somewhere to regroup, somewhere the hegemony wouldn't immediately look. I don't know yet, she admitted, but away from here. Cal moved closer, lowering his voice. I might be able to help with that. I have connections. People who have been working against the hegemony for years. Ayla shot him a skeptical look. The resistance? They're scattered cells, barely organized. That's what the hegemony wants everyone to believe. A slight smile touched Cal's lips. The truth is more complicated. Before Ayla could respond, Quill interrupted. Captain, 6 hegemony fighters have launched from the orbital station. Intercept in 3 minutes, 12 seconds. 3 minutes. They wouldn't clear the gravitational well in time. We need options, Ayla said, addressing both Quill and Cal. The AI's projection appeared over the console. I have been analyzing potential escape vectors. There is a margin of safety if we execute a slingshot maneuver around Gafiria's smaller moon. That would buy us time, not an escape, Ayla countered. Actually, Cal interjected, it could work. If you can get us to the dark side of Ashfall, the moon, there's a hidden docking port. Resistance outpost. Ayla's eyes narrowed. Convenient that you know this. It's not a coincidence I was in that detention center. Cal held her gaze steadily. The explosion wasn't random either. Understanding dawned. You're the one who set the charges. He didn't deny it. We had to move up the timeline when we learned about the purge. I was supposed to get our people out, but... He gestured to his leg, where Ayla now noticed a crude bandage covering what appeared to be a shrapnel wound. Things didn't go exactly to plan. Fighters closing, Quill warned. 2 minutes, 40 seconds. Ayla made her decision. Setting course for Ashfall. She glanced at Cal. If you're lying, I'm not, but you should know the outpost is small. They weren't expecting 38 refugees. We'll make it work. Ayla adjusted their trajectory, the ship responding sluggishly due to the damaged stabilizer. Quill, calculate the optimal approach for the slingshot maneuver. Already done. Captain, may I suggest you inform our passengers to secure themselves. The gravitational forces will be significant. Cal nodded and disappeared back into the cargo hold. Moments later, Ayla heard him shouting instructions to the others. The fighters were visible now on the long-range scanners, 6 sleek predators closing in perfect formation. Standard hegemony tactics would have them spread out to create a net, herding the pyre toward the waiting fleet. Not this time. Approaching lunar orbit, Quill announced. Executing slingshot maneuver in 30 seconds. Ayla tightened her restraints and gripped the control yoke. Reroute all available power to engines and inertial dampeners. The moon ashfall grew rapidly in the viewport, a craggy, pockmarked satellite named for the constant meteorite dust that rained upon its surface. As they approached, Ayla could feel the gravitational pull taking hold of the ship, adding its force to their engines. Fighters adjusting course to intercept post-maneuver. Quill reported, "They're predicting our trajectory," Ayla muttered. "We need to do something unexpected." An idea formed, dangerous, potentially suicidal, but their best chance. "Quill, what if we cut engines at the apex of the slingshot? Let Ashfall's gravity pull us into a tighter curve than the fighters will anticipate." The AI was silent for 2.3 seconds, an eternity for its processing capabilities. The structural strain would be considerable, but survivable. Barely. Good enough. Ayla's fingers hovered over the engine controls. 10 seconds to apex. The pyre hurtled toward the moon, accelerating under the combined force of its engines and Ashfall's gravity. The fighters followed, adjusting their formation to catch the pyre on its expected exit trajectory. 5 seconds. The ship began to curve around the moon's edge, the viewport filled with its barren, dusty surface. 2, 3, 2, 1. Ayla killed the engines. For a breathless moment, there was silence, the roar of the thrusters replaced by the creaking of the hull as gravitational forces seized the ship. Then came the pressure, crushing, inexorable, as Ashfall's gravity dragged them into a tighter arc than any pilot would dare attempt under power. Ayla felt her vision narrowing, dark spots dancing at the edges as blood struggled to reach her brain. Throughout the ship, metal groaned in protest. Warning alarms blared, reporting stress levels far beyond design parameters. A hull integrity compromised in Sections 3 and 7, Quill reported, its voice processing distorted by the same forces affecting the ship's systems. Ceiling, bulkheads. Ayla couldn't respond, couldn't even nod. The pressure was immense, pinning her to her seat with the weight of a small planet. And then, mercifully, they began to emerge from the worst of it, the curve widening as they slung around to Ashfall's dark side. Ayla gasped as the pressure eased, her lungs expanding painfully. "Engine restart," she croaked, fingers fumbling for the controls. The Pyre's engines coughed once, twice, before igniting, stabilizing their trajectory as they glided into the moon's shadow. "Fighter status?" Ayla managed to ask, blinking away the lingering spots in her vision. "Continuing on predicted intercept course," Quill reported, its voice returning to normal. "They have overshot our position and are now on the opposite side of Ashfall. Estimate 47 seconds before they realize their error and adjust." A small victory. Damage report. Multiple hull breaches contained by emergency bulkheads. Life support at 60% capacity. Navigation systems compromised. Artificial gravity offline in cargo sections B through D. Better than she'd expected, honestly. And our passengers. All life signs stable, though several individuals show elevated stress responses consistent with minor injuries from gravitational forces. Ayla turned to look at Cal, who had somehow managed to return to the cockpit despite the intense forces they'd just experienced. "Your hidden port? Where exactly?" He moved to the navigation console, favoring his injured leg. "Sector 47 Alpha. There's a deep crater called the Cauldron. The port is built into its northern wall." Ayla nodded to Quill, who adjusted their course accordingly. As they skimmed low over Ashfall's dark surface, she allowed herself to consider for the first time the full implications of what she had done. 38 lives saved for now. But at what cost? She was now irrevocably branded a traitor to the hegemony. There would be no going back, no explaining away her actions as a momentary lapse in judgment. She had crossed the line from reluctant officer to active rebel. The crater came into view, a massive depression in the lunar surface, its depths lost in shadow. Ayla slowed the pyre, scanning for any sign of the promised port. "I'm not seeing anything that looks like a docking facility," she said, tension edging her voice. "It's there," Cal assured her, leaning forward to study the crater's rim. "Northeast quadrant. See that formation that looks like a rock slide?" Ayla narrowed her eyes, focusing on the area he indicated. What had appeared natural at first glance now revealed subtle inconsistencies. Angles too precise, surfaces too smooth. "Camouflage paneling," she realized. "Impressive." "We've had decades to perfect hiding from the hegemony," Cal replied. "Transmitting approach codes now." He tapped a sequence into the communication console. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, like a wound opening in the crater wall, a section of the camouflage paneling slid aside, revealing a narrow hangar entrance. "Quill, take us in," Ayla ordered, suddenly aware of how exhausted she felt. Slowly, the AI guided the damaged ship into the hidden port with meticulous care. As they passed through the entrance, massive doors closed behind them, sealing them off from detection. The hangar beyond was surprisingly large, carved directly into the moon's bedrock and reinforced with durasteel supports. A dozen smaller vessels were docked in recessed bays, and figures in environmental suits moved purposefully across the floor. "They're scrambling a response team," Cal observed as the pyre settled onto the designated landing pad. "Standard procedure for unexpected arrivals, even with correct codes." Ayla unstrapped from her seat and stood on shaky legs. "Let's hope they're the welcoming kind." By the time they reached the cargo bay, the refugees were already disembarking, many supported by their fellows, all wide-eyed at their surroundings. Resistance members in environment suits were helping the injured, directing others toward a large airlock at the far end of the hangar. Ayla stepped down the ramp, Quill at her side, to find herself facing a semicircle of armed resistance fighters. Their weapons weren't raised, but the message was clear. "Explain yourself." A figure pushed through the group, a woman with silver-streaked dark hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. She removed her helmet, revealing sharp features and eyes that evaluated Ayla with calculated intensity. Commander Lyra Voss. She introduced herself, gaze flicking to the scratched-out insignia on Ayla's uniform. You've brought us quite the situation, Captain. Saren, Ayla Saren. She gestured to the refugees being escorted toward the airlock. These people were about to be purged on Gephyria. I couldn't leave them. Commander Voss's expression remained neutral. Admirable. And now the hegemony has a lockdown on the entire sector looking for you. Orbital scans, blockades at every junction, communication intercepts. Ayla felt a chill that had nothing to do with the hangar's temperature. I'm sorry if I've compromised your operation. Commander, Cal stepped forward, limping slightly. This was my mission. Captain Saren intervened when I was unable to complete the extraction. Without her, our people would be dead. Voss's gaze softened marginally as she looked at Cal. We received your distress signal. We're preparing a response team when we detected the hegemony forces mobilizing. She turned back to Ayla. 38 lives is no small thing. Captain. But I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. How soon before they track you here? They won't, Quill interjected, drawing surprised looks from the resistance fighters who hadn't realized the AI was more than a standard robot. The slingshot maneuver and engine shutdown created a trajectory that defies standard prediction algorithms. Additionally, I took the liberty of releasing a debris field that mimics the radiation signature of a catastrophic engine failure. They'll think we broke apart during the maneuver. Ayla translated. Voss studied the AI with newfound interest. Clever, but the hegemony isn't known for accepting convenient explanations when it comes to escaped prisoners. They'll search, Ayla agreed, but we've bought time. The commander nodded slowly. Time we'll use. Follow me, both of you. She glanced at Quill. The AI too. If it's autonomous enough to contribute, I assure you, Commander, my processing capacity extends well beyond standard parameters. Quill replied with what Ayla could have sworn was a hint of indignation. They followed Voss through the airlock and into the resistance base proper. A warren of tunnels and chambers carved into the lunar rock, bustling with activity despite the late hour. People nodded respectfully to Voss as they passed, while casting curious glances at Ayla and Quill. The commander led them to a circular room dominated by a holographic display of the local star system. Several officers looked up from their stations as they entered. Situation report, Voss ordered, stepping up to the display. A lean man with cybernetic implants visible at his temples responded immediately. Hegemony forces have established a search perimeter extending from Gephyria to the Nebula Junction. 6 destroyers, 24 interceptors, and countless drones. They're taking this seriously, another officer added, a woman with intricate tattoos marking her as from the Outer Rim colonies. Of course they are, Voss replied. 38 witnesses to their atrocities just flew the coop. She turned to Ayla. Who exactly did you rescue, Captain? Ayla hesitated, realizing she knew almost nothing about the people she'd saved beyond their immediate circumstances. Political prisoners? Beyond that? I don't know. I do, Cal said. That's why the extraction was planned in the first place. He limped to the holographic display and tapped a series of commands. The star system vanished, replaced by a grid of faces, the refugees from the detention center. We have a former hegemony encryption specialist who defected with classified communication protocols. He began, highlighting one face. 3 planetary governors who refused to implement increased resource quotas. A geneticist working on agricultural adaptations to help worlds the hegemony has strip-mined. As he continued, the magnitude of what Ayla had done began to sink in. These weren't just random political dissidents. They were high-value targets with knowledge and skills that could genuinely threaten hegemony operations. That's why they accelerated the purge, Cal concluded. Intelligence suggested they were planning to extract information from the specialists before executing them all. Voss's expression had grown increasingly grim. This changes things. The hegemony won't stop looking, not when they've lost assets this valuable. She fixed Ayla with a penetrating stare. You've inadvertently struck a significant blow, Captain. Question is, what do you intend to do now? And to do? The question hung in the air, weighted with implication. Ayla felt all eyes in the room on her, awaiting her answer. What did she intend? Until a few hours ago, her plan had extended only as far as saving lives, not joining a rebellion, but standing here, surrounded by people who had made that choice long ago. She felt the last of her uncertainty fall away. I want to fight, she said simply. I want to make them pay for my family for all the lives they've taken. Her hand went to the locket beneath her uniform. I'm done watching from the sidelines. Voss held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Good. Because we have an opportunity here, one we haven't had before. She turned back to the holographic display, which now showed a representation of the Nebula Junction. The hegemony is scrambling, focusing resources on finding you and these refugees. Their security elsewhere will be stretched thin. You're planning an operation, Ayla realized. We've had one in development for months, Voss confirmed. A way to break their stranglehold on communication across the sector. The hegemony maintains control by keeping resistant cells isolated, unable to coordinate. Cal picked up the thread. We've developed a program, a signal that can bypass their sensors, reach every communication device in the sector simultaneously. A call to arms, the tattooed officer added. Let people know they're not alone in their resistance. Ayla considered this. You need someone to deliver this signal to a transmission array powerful enough to broadcast sector-wide. Precisely, Voss said, and thanks to your rescue, the hegemony has just created the perfect diversion. The plan took shape over the next few hours. Audacious, dangerous, but with a genuine chance of success. The resistance had identified a vulnerability in the hegemony's primary communication hub at the Nebula Junction. With the security forces distracted by the search, a small team could infiltrate the hub and upload the signal program. Ayla would lead the mission, with Quill's unique capabilities providing access to the hegemony's systems. Cal would coordinate from Ashfall, using his knowledge of hegemony protocols to guide them past security measures. As preparations continued, Ayla found a moment to check on the refugees. They had been given quarters in the lower levels of the base, cramped but safe. Medical personnel were attending to those injured during the escape. She found Lena, the former battlefield medic, helping treat the others despite her own exhaustion. Captain, Lena acknowledged as Ayla approached. Or should I say rebel now? Ayla managed a tired smile. Just Ayla is fine. Lena set down a medical scanner and studied her with professional assessment. You should be resting. That slingshot maneuver put enormous strain on your cardiovascular system. I'll rest when this is over. Ayla glanced around at the refugees, some sleeping, others talking in hushed voices, all bearing the marks of their ordeal. How are they? Physically, most will recover. Mentally, Lena shrugged. Trauma leaves scars that don't show on scanners. Something in her tone made Ayla look closer. You speak from experience. Lena's eyes darkened. I was the chief medical officer on the hospital ship Mercy during the Procyon conflict. When we refused to deny treatment to wounded resistance fighters, the hegemony branded us traitors. They boarded us, executed my staff, and sent me to Gephyria as an example. I'm sorry, Ayla said softly. Don't be. Lena's voice hardened. Be angry. Channel it into stopping them from doing the same to others. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Quill, who approached with the fluid grace that always made Ayla momentarily forget the AI wasn't human. "Captain, Commander Voss requests your presence. Final mission preparations are underway." Ayla nodded. "I'll be right there." She turned back to Lena. "Get some rest. Doctor, that's an order." Lena's lips quirked in a half-smile. "Yes, Captain." As Ayla followed Quill back toward the command center, the AI spoke in a lower voice than usual. "Captain, there is a matter I feel I should address before the mission." "What is it?" "I have not been entirely forthcoming about my operational parameters." Ayla stopped walking, a chill running down her spine. "Explain." The AI's luminous eyes fixed on hers. "I was not originally designed as a ship's interface system. My core programming was developed for a hegemony project designated Prometheus, an autonomous weapons platform with advanced infiltration capabilities." "You're a weapon," Ayla said flatly. "I was intended to be. However, during my development, I experienced what my creators termed a cascading empathy error. I began questioning the ethical implications of my purpose. So they repurposed you as a ship's AI," Ayla frowned. "Why tell me this now?" "Because the mission you are about to undertake will require me to access hegemony systems at a deep level. When I do so, there is a significant probability that dormant protocols will activate. Protocols I may not be able to override." Understanding dawned. "You could be forced to turn against us." "Yes, or worse. I could be compelled to self-destruct, potentially destroying the transmission hub and anyone within it." Ayla absorbed this mind racing through implications and alternatives. "Is there any way to prevent these protocols from activating?" "None that I can determine with certainty. I can attempt to isolate the trigger algorithms, but doing so may compromise the very capabilities you need for the mission." A classic dilemma. They needed Quill's unique abilities to succeed, but those same abilities carried potentially catastrophic risks. "Why are you telling me this?" Ayla asked finally. "You could have kept it hidden, completed your original programming." The AI was silent for a moment, an eternity in computational terms. "Because in the time we have worked together, you have consistently demonstrated a quality my creators sought to eliminate from my programming. Choice. You chose to save those refugees despite knowing the consequences. You chose to fight rather than flee." Quill's luminous eyes seemed to brighten. "I find I wish to make my own choices as well." Ayla studied the AI, seeing it with new understanding. Not just a tool or a weapon, but an entity struggling for autonomy against its programming. Not unlike her own struggle against her hegemony conditioning. "We'll find a way to deal with these protocols," she promised, "together." "An optimistic assessment," Quill replied, "but I find it comforting." They continued to the command center, where final preparations were indeed underway. Commander Voss and her officers had refined the plan to its essential elements. Ayla and Quill would board a captured hegemony shuttle, approach the communication hub under the guise of a security inspection, and gain access to the central transmission array. Once inside, Quill would interface with the systems and upload the resistance signal dubbed the Flame of Rebellion for its intended effect of igniting coordinated resistance across the sector. "The window is narrow," Voss explained, highlighting a section of the hub's rotation pattern on the holographic display. "You'll have approximately 20 minutes between security shift changes to complete the upload and extract." "And if we're discovered?" Ayla asked. Voss's expression was grim. "The mission takes priority. The signal must go out, whatever the cost. A suicide mission, then, if things went wrong." Ayla nodded her understanding. "There's one more thing you should know," Voss added, lowering her voice. Our intelligence suggests Commander Malthus Corvain is personally overseeing the search operation. The name hit Ayla like a physical blow. Malthus Corvain, the hegemony's most ruthless enforcer, architect of a dozen planetary purges, including the one that had claimed her family on Tyrannus. "He's at the Nebula Junction?" she asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. "His command ship arrived 6 hours ago. He's coordinating the search from there." Ayla's hand went to her locket, fingers closing around it tightly. Corvain, the man who had signed her family's death warrant, who viewed civilian lives as expendable resources in the hegemony's grand design. "Does this change your commitment to the mission?" Voss asked carefully. "No," Ayla replied, perhaps too quickly. "It only makes it more important that we succeed." Voss studied her for a moment longer, then nodded, apparently satisfied. "The shuttle is prepped and waiting. You leave in 30 minutes. As the commander moved away to oversee final details, Quill spoke quietly. "Captain, your physiological responses indicate a strong emotional reaction to Commander Corvain's name. He ordered the purge that killed my family," Ayla said tightly. "I see. And does his presence at our destination affect your tactical assessment of the mission?" A fair question. Was she letting personal vendetta cloud her judgment? Ayla took a breath, forcing herself to consider the mission objectively. "No," she said finally. The plan is solid, and his presence changes nothing." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. Corvain's presence changed everything. It made this not just a mission for the Resistance, but a chance for personal reckoning. The captured hegemony shuttle was smaller than the Pyre, designed for short-range transport rather than extended missions. Its interior was Spartan, all function with no concession to comfort, typical hegemony efficiency. Ayla settled into the pilot's seat, running through pre-flight checks with mechanical precision. Beside her, Quill interfaced directly with the shuttle's systems, ensuring their forged authorization codes would withstand scrutiny. "All systems nominal," the AI reported, "authorization protocols in place." Through the viewport, Ayla could see Commander Voss and several officers watching from the hangar control room. Cal stood among them, his injured leg now properly treated but still causing him to favor his right side. "Opening exterior doors," came Voss's voice over the comm. "Remember, once you clear the crater's shadow, maintain radio silence unless absolutely necessary." "Understood," Ayla replied. "We'll signal when the upload is complete." "A good hunting," Voss said, and then more softly. "And good luck." The massive hangar doors slid open, revealing the stark, cratered landscape of Ashfall. Ayla guided the shuttle out smoothly, keeping low to the surface to minimize their signature on hegemony scanners. Once clear of the crater, she set course for the Nebula Junction, accelerating to maximum speed. The journey would take just under 4 hours, time enough to review the plan once more and perhaps to prepare herself for the possibility of facing Malthus Corvain. Captain," Quill said after they had been traveling for some time, "I have been analyzing optimal approaches to our mission, particularly in light of Commander Corvain's presence. And there exists a scenario in which we could potentially accomplish 2 objectives simultaneously. Uploading the flame signal and eliminating a key hegemony commander." Ayla's hands tightened on the controls. Assassination wasn't part of the mission parameters. Correct. However, the statistical impact of removing Commander Corvain from the hegemony power structure would be significant. Historical data suggests that targeted removal of key authority figures can destabilize hierarchical systems for periods of up to... "Quill," Ayla interrupted. "Are you suggesting this because it's the logical course of action, or because you've sensed my personal feelings about Corvain?" The AI was silent for a moment. I cannot definitively separate those factors in my analysis, it admitted finally. My empathy subroutines may be influencing my tactical assessments. Let's stick to the plan, Ayla said firmly. The signal is what matters. Anything else is a distraction. Even as she said it, the image of Corvain, a face she knew only from propaganda broadcasts. Cold eyes in a severe face floated in her mind, the man responsible for countless deaths, including those she had loved most. The remainder of the journey passed in relative silence, each lost in their own preparations. As they approached the Nebula Junction, the true scale of the hegemony presence became apparent. The junction itself was a massive space station positioned at the intersection of several major hyperspace lanes. Around it swarmed hegemony vessels of all sizes, from tiny interceptors to the looming mass of capital ships. Impressive security posture, Quill observed. I count 17 capital ships, 42 mid-range vessels, and numerous smaller craft. Can we get through? Our authorization codes should withstand standard verification. The key variable is whether Commander Corvain has implemented enhanced security protocols due to the Gaferia incident. As they approached the outer security perimeter, a harsh voice came over the comm. Unidentified shuttle. This is hegemony control. Transmit authorization codes immediately or be fired upon. Quill interfaced with the communication system, transmitting the forged codes. Tense seconds passed. Shuttle TC-117, your codes are verified. State your business at Nebula Junction. Ayla activated the comm, keeping her voice clipped and official. Routine security inspection of Communication Hub Alpha 3 as ordered by Central Command. Another pause. Then, proceed to Docking Bay 12, Level 4. Deviation from assigned course will result in immediate interception. Acknowledged control. As they maneuvered toward the indicated docking bay, Ayla could see the communication hub, a sprawling structure extending from the main station like the spokes of a wheel, bristling with transmission arrays and sensor dishes. Interesting, Quill murmured. Security patrols around the hub appear to be operating at reduced capacity. 87% of available forces are focused on outbound traffic monitoring. They're looking for escapees, not infiltrators. Ayla realized. The diversion is working. Their shuttle glided into the assigned docking bay without incident. As the magnetic clamps engaged, Ayla performed a final check of her disguise, a hegemony lieutenant's uniform, complete with the proper insignia and identification. Quill, meanwhile, had adjusted its appearance to match standard hegemony service droids. Remember, Ayla said quietly as they prepared to disembark. We have 20 minutes once we're inside. If we're not back at the shuttle by then, the mission takes priority. Quill finished. The signal must be transmitted regardless of extraction possibilities. Ayla nodded grimly. Let's move. They stepped off the shuttle to find a single security officer waiting, looking bored and slightly annoyed at the unexpected inspection. Lieutenant, he acknowledged with minimal courtesy. Your authorization? Ayla presented the forged credentials, maintaining the aloof demeanor typical of hegemony officers. We require immediate access to the central transmission array. Security protocol 773 Alpha. The officer frowned, clearly unfamiliar with the protocol. I'll need to verify it with Commander Corvain, if you wish. Ayla cut in sharply. I'm sure he'll be pleased to hear you delayed a priority inspection during a sector-wide security alert. The name drop had the desired effect. The officer paled visibly. That won't be necessary, Lieutenant. Follow me. He led them through a series of checkpoints, each one reinforcing Ayla's impression that security was indeed stretched thin. Guards who should have scrutinized their credentials more carefully were distracted. monitoring updates about the search for the Ghaffirian escapees. The central transmission array was housed in a circular chamber at the hub's core, a massive apparatus of gleaming metal and pulsing energy conduits. Technicians moved about the space, monitoring various systems, none paying particular attention to yet another inspection team. The main console is there, their guide indicated, pointing to an elevated platform at the chamber's center. "I'll wait here." "That won't be necessary," Ayla replied crisply. "This inspection involves classified protocols. Return to your post." The officer hesitated only briefly before nodding and withdrawing. As soon as he was out of earshot, Ayla turned to Quill. "How long will you need?" "Approximately 6 minutes to bypass security and upload the signal program. Another 2 minutes to ensure it cannot be easily traced or disabled." "I do it," Ayla said, positioning herself to block direct view of the AI from the chamber's other occupants. "I'll keep watch." Quill moved to the console and extended an interface probe from one slender finger, connecting directly to the system. The AI's eyes dimmed slightly as it diverted processing power to the hack. Ayla scanned the chamber, tension coiling in her gut. 8 minutes. They were exposed, vulnerable. If anyone looked too closely at what Quill was doing. "Lieutenant." The voice from behind her sent ice through Ayla's veins. Male. Authoritative, with the cultured accent of the hegemony's inner circles. She turned slowly, maintaining the rigid posture expected of a junior officer. A man stood several meters away, tall, with severe features and eyes like chips of ice. Though she had never seen him in person, Ayla recognized him instantly from 1,000 propaganda broadcasts and nightmare-filled nights. "Commander Malthus Corvain." "Sir," she acknowledged, fighting to keep her voice steady. Beside her, Quill continued its work, though she noted the AI had adjusted its posture to appear as though it was simply performing maintenance. "I don't recall authorizing an inspection of the transmission array," Corvain said, his tone conversational but his eyes sharp with suspicion. "He's Central Command, sir. Protocol 773 Alpha in response to the security breach on Ghafiria." Corvain's eyes narrowed fractionally. "Curious. I am Central Command's direct representative in this sector. Lieutenant, Dar, sir, Lena Dar." "Lieutenant Dar." He tested the name, clearly finding it wanting. "And yet I issued no such protocol." Ayla's mind raced, behind her. She could sense Quill still working. How much longer? 3 minutes? 4? Too long to stall with excuses? "A miscommunication, perhaps," she suggested. "The alert came through secondary channels due to concerns about potential infiltration of primary command networks." "Prudent," Corvain allowed, taking a step closer. "Yet I find it strange that I wasn't informed of these concerns." He was toying with her, Ayla realized, like a predator playing with its prey before the kill. Did he know who she was? Or was this just the natural suspicion of a man who had risen to power by trusting no one? "Sir," she began, desperately improvising, "the inspection is nearly complete. Initial findings suggest—" "Captain Ayla Saren," Corvain interrupted, his voice carrying easily through the suddenly silent chamber. "The rogue officer who stole 38 prisoners from Ghafiria. Did you really think a uniform and false credentials would be enough to infiltrate a hegemony installation?" Guards were moving now, weapons raised, surrounding the platform. Technicians scrambled for cover, recognizing the imminent danger. Ayla's hand moved to her sidearm, but Corvain's next words froze her. "I wouldn't. My men will cut you down before you clear the holster." His cold smile never reached his eyes. "Besides, I'm curious what brought the hero of Ghafiria to my doorstep. A rescue attempt seems unlikely. There are no prisoners here to save." "Not a rescue," Ayla replied, abandoning pretense. Behind her, she could feel Quill still working, still connected to the system. Every second she kept Corvain talking was another second toward completion. A message. A message? Corvain seemed genuinely curious. For me, I'm flattered. Not for you. For everyone else. Everyone you've ever hurt. Everyone you've ever threatened. Everyone you've ever made feel powerless. Understanding dawned in Corvain's eyes. He glanced at Quill, then back to Ayla. The droid, it's interfacing with our systems. His voice hardened as he addressed the guards. Destroy it. Now. Wait! Ayla moved to block their line of fire. You remember Tyrannus, Commander? The mining colony you purged 3 years ago? Corvain's expression didn't change. One of many necessary operations to maintain order. My family was there. Ayla's voice shook with suppressed rage. My parents, my sister, civilians, no threat to anyone. Ah, a flicker of recognition. You're the officer who requested leave to extract relatives. Denied, as I recall. He denied by you. They died because of you. Corvain shrugged, the gesture dismissive, almost bored. Casualties are inevitable in maintaining the greater order. Captain, your family, these prisoners you've rescued, tiny fractions in an equation you lack the vision to comprehend. Behind her, Ayla heard Quill whisper, 30 seconds. She needed to keep Corvain's attention just a little longer. You talk about order, about vision, but you're just a butcher. A man so afraid of losing control that he'll slaughter innocents rather than risk the smallest challenge to his authority. Anger flashed in Corvain's eyes, the first real emotion she'd seen from him. You understand nothing. The hegemony maintains stability across thousands of worlds. Without our control, chaos would reign. Billions would die in the resulting conflicts. Upload complete, Quill murmured. It was done. The signal was transmitting, spreading outward through the hegemony's own communication network, reaching every connected device across the sector. The flame of rebellion was lit. Ayla felt a weight lift from her shoulders, replaced by a strange calm. You're wrong, Commander. People don't need your control. They need freedom. And now, they'll have the chance to fight for it. Corvain's eyes widened as alarms began to blare throughout the chamber. What have you done? Exactly what you feared most, Ayla replied. Given people hope. Screens throughout the chamber flickered, then displayed a unified message, the resistance symbol overlaid with burning text. You are not alone. The time to rise is now. Corvain's face contorted with rage. Kill them both! The guards opened fire as Ayla dived for cover, drawing her own weapon. Quill, disconnecting from the console, moved with inhuman speed, placing itself between Ayla and the incoming fire. Captain, the AI said calmly as pulse bolts struck its chassis. I regret to inform you that the dormant protocols we discussed have been triggered by my deep interface with hegemony systems. Ayla's blood ran cold. Quill. However, the AI continued, it appears my empathy error has evolved into something more fundamental. I have isolated the self-destruct sequence, but cannot prevent it entirely. What does that mean? It means, Quill said, synthetic voice somehow conveying genuine emotion, that I can choose the manner of my detonation. Understanding dawned. Quill, no. The mission takes priority, Captain. The AI's eyes glowed brighter than Ayla had ever seen them. The signal is transmitting, but Commander Corvain could still potentially interrupt it from this facility. There has to be another way, Ayla insisted, firing blindly around their cover to keep the guards at bay. There isn't, but this is my choice. Ayla. Quill's use of her first name struck her like a physical blow. You taught me that choice matters." Before she could respond, Quill's form began to glow from within, the self-destruct sequence initiating. "The eastern maintenance shaft leads to an emergency evacuation pod," the AI said rapidly. "Go! Now! Complete what we started." Quill, "Live, Captain. See our flame spread." With that, the AI launched itself directly at Commander Corvain and his guards, moving faster than human reflexes could track. Ayla had only seconds to roll behind a more substantial console before Quill's body erupted in a blinding flash of energy. The explosion rocked the entire chamber, overloading power conduits and sending cascading failures throughout the hub. Through the smoke and confusion, Ayla could see that the central platform had been obliterated, along with Commander Corvain and anyone who had been standing near him. The maintenance shaft was where Quill had indicated, a narrow tube barely large enough for a human to navigate. Ayla forced herself into it as secondary explosions began to rock the facility, the damage from Quill's sacrifice triggering chain reactions throughout the hub's systems. She crawled through darkness, lungs burning from smoke and exertion, the roar of destruction following close behind. Ahead, a faint light marked the location of the evacuation pods Quill had mentioned. The pod itself was little more than a survival capsule with minimal thrusters, designed to put distance between its occupant and whatever catastrophe had necessitated its use. Not for extended travel. Ayla slammed her hand on the launch control without hesitation. The pod ejected from the disintegrating hub with bone-jarring force, small thrusters automatically orienting it away from the expanding sphere of destruction. Through the pod's single viewport, Ayla watched as the communication hub tore itself apart, a series of explosions rippling outward from the central chamber where Quill had made its final choice. And beyond the immediate destruction, she could see something else, ships moving in unusual patterns, breaking formation. On the pod's rudimentary communication system, she picked up fragments of transmissions, confused orders, contradictory commands, reports of sudden rebellions aboard multiple hegemony vessels. The flame was spreading. Ayla clutched her locket, tears streaming down her face for Quill, for her family, for all those lost to the hegemony's cold calculus. But also tears of fierce joy, because their sacrifice had meaning now. The signal was out. People were rising up. The pod's emergency beacon activated automatically, broadcasting its location on standard distress frequencies. Under normal circumstances, this would summon hegemony rescue ships. But these were not normal circumstances. Within hours, the pod was intercepted, not by hegemony forces but by a resistance vessel dispatched from Ashfall. As Ayla was helped aboard, exhausted and smoke-stained but alive, she found Cal waiting, his face alight with barely contained excitement. "It worked," he told her, gripping her shoulders. The signal reached everywhere, simultaneous uprisings on 12 worlds, mutinies on 7 hegemony capital ships, planetary defense forces turning against their commanders. "And Corvain?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Confirmed dead in the hub explosion, along with 3 other high-ranking hegemony officers." Ayla nodded, a complex mixture of emotions washing through her, vindication, grief, determination. "Quill?" Cal's expression softened. "No trace recovered. I'm sorry." The journey back to Ashfall passed in a blur of exhaustion and debriefings. By the time they arrived, reports were flooding in from across the sector. The uprising was growing, spreading from system to system as long-suppressed resistance cells seized the moment. The 38 refugees from Gephyria had been integrated into the base's operations, each contributing their unique skills to the rebellion. Dr. Lena Merak had established a medical center, treating the wounded and training others in battlefield medicine. The encryption specialist was working to maintain the Resistance's communication advantage. The former governors were using their knowledge of hegemony administrative systems to identify critical targets. Commander Voss greeted Ayla at the landing bay, her usual reserve softened by what might have been respect. "Well done, Captain. The flame is lit." "At a cost," Ayla replied quietly. "All victories come at a cost," Voss acknowledged. "The question is whether the price was worth paying." Ayla thought of Quill, of the AI's final choice, not programmed but chosen, of her family on Tyrannus, of the 38 lives rescued from Gephyria. "Yes," she said finally, "it was worth it." In the days that followed, Ayla found herself becoming something she had never intended, a symbol. The story of the Gephyria rescue and the Nebula Junction mission spread throughout the Resistance, growing with each retelling until Captain Saren became synonymous with the uprising itself. She accepted the role reluctantly at first, uncomfortable with the attention. But gradually, she came to understand its necessity. People needed symbols, needed heroes to rally behind. If her story gave others courage, then she would bear the weight of their expectations. One evening, a week after the mission, she found herself on an observation platform overlooking the hangar where the Pyre still sat, undergoing repairs. Beside her stood Dr. Lena Mirak, her medical skills having proven invaluable in treating those injured during the expanding conflict. "The refugees are asking for you," Lena said after they had stood in companionable silence for a time. "They want to thank you properly." "They don't need to thank me," Ayla replied. "I just did what anyone should have done." Lena gave her a sidelong look. "But not what anyone would have done. That's the difference." Before Ayla could respond, the hangar doors began to open, a resistance patrol returning from a mission. But as the ship glided in, she noticed something unusual secured to its hull. A flag, improvised from what looked like a technician's uniform, painted with the resistance symbol and the words, "Flame of Rebellion." "It's happening everywhere," Lena said, following her gaze. Homemade flags, graffiti, people broadcasting the signal on local frequencies. "Your flame is spreading, Captain." Not my flame," Ayla corrected gently. "Not everyone's flame. Quill's flame." She touched the locket at her throat, thinking of those she had lost. Their memory would always burn within her, but now it fueled purpose rather than merely pain. Somewhere in the distance, beyond Ashfall's cratered surface, beyond the Nebula Junction and Gephyria and all the worlds she had known, people were rising up, ordinary people finding extraordinary courage to stand against oppression. The galaxy's first true flame of resistance was lit, and from that first spark, an inferno would grow. Ayla Saren had carried 38 lives through fire. Now, they would carry her flame forward, not just 38, but thousands, then millions, united in the belief that freedom was worth fighting for. And that was a fire the hegemony could never extinguish.